What are we discussing on today's Locked On Dimebacks podcast? Eugenio Suarez on fire as the D-backs get their first victory this season against Atlanta, but can they finish the job and get the series split?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Dimebacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's show, we are going to be talking about Eugenio Suarez continuing to be on fire in the month of July. D-backs going for the series split, and we're going to have a tough Alek Thomas conversation in segment number 3. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. And this episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. All right. Let's get into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's talk about the D-backs Game 3 victory over the Atlanta Braves, because the D-backs were able to bounce back in a big way. They have lost their first 5 games this season to Atlanta, the only team that has swept the D-backs this season. The D-backs, we knew going to the game, have been really good this season, went down 0-2 in a series. We talked about it on the podcast yesterday. We said if you've been following this D-backs team, if you've witnessed their trends, most likely Game 3 of a 4-game series when they're down 0-2, they're probably going to win that Game 3, either with a late clutch win or with a win in convincing fashion. Either, win by 6 or get some late clutch runs. And we got the latter with the late clutch runs for the D-backs, because the offense was really good in game number 3 in terms of responding to every time the Braves scored. When you go and look at the box score, you notice every time the Braves scored in the next half inning, the D-backs responded. And guess what? You know what you call that? You call that the answer backs right there. That's what the D-backs did so well all last season, responding to adversity in the moment, right? They were one of the clutchest teams last year. Late game situations, the D-backs absolutely dominated those moments. And for most of this season, the D-backs did not dominate those moments. When you looked at D-backs versus Atlanta the first time around, what was the issue? D-backs would take early leads in each of those games, but then end up losing because of the late offensive attack by Atlanta. And once again, Atlanta tried their best. Atlanta scores 2 in the second, D-backs score 2 in the second. Atlanta scores 1 in the third, D-backs score 1 in the third. And of course, we know Atlanta was going to have their late offensive attack, right? D-backs go up 5-3 in this ball game. They take a little 2-run lead in the 7th. Atlanta, of course, has to tie it up in the 8th, but great clutch offense by the D-backs in the bottom of the 8th to give them the lead and give them the victory. And of course, Paul Sewald closed it out, which was huge for the Arizona Diamondbacks. This was pretty much as close as you could get to a complete team performance. I mean, we would have loved to see a little bit better Slade Ciccone, but you got a lot of good things in this game. Like the first time this season you scored off Atlanta's bullpen. Like, we know the D-backs over the last few weeks have been able to score late, but we haven't really seen it against Atlanta. They've been like the one opponent this season that's been the kryptonite for the D-backs in terms of late game scoring. But last night, the D-backs were able to do it in the 8th inning and actually score off 2 of Atlanta's relievers after not scoring off the bullpen all season through 5 games against the Braves this year. He also got many 2-out RBI situations that you converted. 4 RBIs with 2 outs. The D-backs have actually been doing a good job of that also since the start of July. You look back at the Dodgers and Padres series, the D-backs had many opportunities that they converted with 2 outs. Like the fact that the D-backs can do that right now where they can score early, first couple innings, punch you in the mouth. They can score late, come through in clutch situations, but also you can't just escape an inning. You put the first 2 guys down, that doesn't mean anything. We saw it in game number 3. 2 outs, and then all of a sudden, Domo comes up, he gets the hit, and then Eugenio Suarez, 2-run home run after that. Like, you can't rest right now with this D-backs lineup, which is something that you weren't able to say all season. But over the last 5 to 6 weeks, like up and down the lineup, everyone has been contributing. Like Jock Peterson and Christian Walker didn't have big games last night, but Walker, great plate appearance in the 8th, was able to score a run for the D-backs because he drew a walk with the bases loaded. Geraldo Perdomo, he listened to the pod yesterday, right? I talked about how the D-backs really needed last year's All-Stars to step up for the second half of this season and for the rest of the year. Geraldo Perdomo, after listening to the pod, fantastic. 3 for 3. First time he had a multi-double game in his career. He was ripping hits to right field consistently in the gap, couple runs and RBI. I thought Perdomo looked fantastic last night at the plate. He seemed so comfortable, even on that sacrifice fly. I mean, that could have been, 6 more inches to the right. That's potentially a triple in the corner. So Domo up to a 294 average now. The slugging isn't exactly there. I think the OBP could be a little bit better too, but he is hitting the ball at a pretty good rate right now. Eugenio Suarez, he continues to just put together a really nice month of July. We waited so long for Eugenio to turn around our season. Toy Lavello, at times we've been frustrated because of his commitment to Eugenio Suarez, but once July hit, I don't know what happened to Eugenio, but it's finally starting to turn around for him, and he's finally starting to become a positive, productive player for the D-backs. In July so far, he's 10 for 29, 6 extra base hits, and 11 RBIs in just 9 games. And his home run in game 3, 452 feet, his longest home run of the year, and his longest home run since 2021. So we might start seeing that power back from Eugenio going forward. Ketel Marte, of course, continued to look like an all-star. Solo home run, clutch hit to keep the rally going in the 8th inning. Like Marte just continues to be an absolute stud and the best second baseman in baseball. So I don't want to gush too much about him because we know how fantastic Marte is. Carroll, he struggled for most of this game at the plate. He always, does a little roll over to second base, ground ball, whatever, but got the rally started in the 8th inning. Love to see that from Corbin Carroll. Rip the ball in the alley and off the jump. Love that from Corbin Carroll. It seems like anytime now he gets the ball in the outfield, he's just thinking too. He's like, I got to use my speed. I'm not hitting that well, so I'm going to turn every single into a double right now. And I love that from Corbin Carroll. One thing I didn't love, Slade Ciccone, not at his best. Feels like he's hit a wall at this point in the season. I think in only 1 of his last 8 starts, he's made at least 5 innings pitched. Like, he doesn't go deep into ball games. He's even, like you saw in last night's game, like we know Slade is supposed to be elite that first time through the order. Didn't look like it last night, and the D-backs optioned him after last night's game. Haven't seen a corresponding move just yet, but that should be announced pretty soon. Slade going back to AAA, D-backs rotation, Gallen, Diaz, Fott, and Ryan Nelson right now will lead us through the All-Star break until the second half starts, and probably potentially a little Humberto Castellanos if we need him as well. Ryan Thompson, he was not his best in this game. He was the one that allowed the Braves to score late. After I called for Ryan Thompson to be the closer for the D-backs, this is what he delivers to me. Very disappointing, but great to see Paul Sewald close it out. He talked about how he didn't want to put too much onus or importance on him saving a game because he didn't put too much importance on him blowing the last 3 games. So he wants to keep business as usual, which I really respect. And potentially he will be out there to close this series as the D-backs look to tie it up. And we'll discuss if we think they can tie it up in segment number 2. But hey, if you're thinking about going to an upcoming D-backs game, then the best place to go to buy tickets is, of course, Game Time, because save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy theater, and more. Flash deals save you even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals save you even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing. All-in pricing shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can even get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And also, this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly want to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities, where hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. From hotels that look over stadiums to a family-friendly resort, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. I can't deny, I love checking out those NL West ballparks, Petco, Dodger Stadium. Love making a trip to LA, San Diego, and checking out my rival city. So I suggest you do the same. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Dimebacks podcast. Let's discuss if the D-backs can tie up this series, because I believe, once again, based off the trends from the D-backs this season, we talked about how when they're down 0-2, they're 99% of the time they're going to win that game 3. The only time they didn't this year was against Atlanta. So maybe the game 4 trend will be different from what we've seen typically from the D-backs this season, but I believe from the trends that we've seen in 2024, the D-backs should win game 4 of this series. I think potentially they could win it in convincing fashion, which I know sounds crazy because they're going against the Atlanta Braves with that lead offense, but the pitching matchup is why I think it's very possible that the D-backs could win the finale in convincing fashion. We got Max Fried. We got Max Fried versus Brandon Pfaadt. And that has potential to be a great duel. I mean, first of all, we have to ask the question, how will Pfaadt look post-injury? How healthy will he be? Is he going to be worried about his ankle? Is every pitch, is he going to be looking down at his foot and, maybe not planting it as hard? Like, is it just going to be like subconsciously in the back of his head? Like, that's the thing with injuries. It doesn't even have to be that serious, but if you're in pain, or if you're just scared of re-injuring it, especially if you've seen this D-backs rotation, like if you're Pfaadt, you're like, God, Monty's on the IL, Kelly's on the IL, Erod's on the IL. I've seen Gallen get hurt, come back, and then get hurt again. So it's like, yeah, if you're Pfaadt, I would be concerned too about injuries with the seemingly dark cloud hanging over the D-backs health this season. So if I'm Pfaadt, yeah, I would be a little worried in the back of my head that maybe I could get hurt again. And also, will the D-backs be cautious with him? Will they say, you know what? He is a guy who is hurting right now. Maybe we don't want to throw him 105 pitches. Maybe we just do, hey, you have 85 through 5. We're going to take you out right here, Brandon Pfaadt. They've done that with Zach Gallen post-injury. I wonder if they do that with Brandon Pfaadt. Just be a little bit more cautious with him, right? He's one of your premier players. He's one of your building blocks, foundational pieces. Like, this is a long-term piece here, and you want to be cautious with your long-term pieces. But if Brandon Pfaadt is fully healthy, I think the D-backs are going to have a legit chance to win this game, because I think Pfaadt is definitely good enough to shut down the Braves lineup. But also, the other reason why I think the D-backs could win this game in convincing fashion, not just because if you have healthy Pfaadt, he could shut down the Braves lineup, but because we've seen Brandon Pfaadt versus Max Fried once this season, and the D-backs rocked Max Fried back in April. 6 runs in the first inning against Max Fried, just absolutely destroyed him. Now, the issue was They put up 6 runs in the first, had a 6-0 lead, but fought. He was racking up the Ks, but as the game wore on, he started giving up more hard contact, and after 5 innings, he gave up 5 earned runs, and the Braves started slowly coming back. As we've seen with many D-backs Braves games this season, D-backs score early, but Braves keep on chipping away, little here, little there, and then by the end of the game, they're hitting the go-ahead home run in the 8th inning, and the D-backs lose. And that's what happened in the last game. D-backs were up 6-0. Then they were up 8-2, and they still lost the game. We know the Braves offense is so clutch in late game situations, and clearly building an early lead is just not enough. If you're D-backs, you have to score early and you have to score late, which is how they won game number 3. So in this rematch, Fott versus Max Fried, I want to see the D-backs score early again against Max Fried. Give me another first inning where you rock him for 5, 6, 7 runs. Like, I want to check the box score, get that notification from the MLB app and be like, oh my God, D-backs put up a 6 spot in the first inning. That would feel fantastic, especially if you do get healthy Fott. I think he should be a lot better the second time around as opposed to the first time around. But I guess you could probably make that argument for Max Fried as well. Like, why would he be worse the second time around as opposed to the first time around? But you never know. So both of those guys could potentially be better, could potentially be worse in this rematch. Max Fried versus Brandon Fott. But what I really want Brandon Fott to do is slow down Marcell Ozuna. He has been the D-backs killer this year. Multiple home runs. He has over 1,000 OPS. He's batting like 320 against us. Like, he has murdered the D-backs this season. And so Ozuna is someone that I think definitely needs to be slowed down in that Braves lineup. And again, it's not going to be easy to do that. Ozuna, from an offensive standpoint, is having an MVP type season. Like, if he played decent defense, he could potentially win the MVP. The problem is he's a full-time DH at this point of his career, but Ozuna, stud, leads the NL in RBIs with 75 already, 24 home runs. I mean, almost 300 average, 942 OPS. Like, Ozuna is having himself a fantastic season. So if the D-backs can do anything to slow down Ozuna, that would really, really help, to be honest, because he's murdered the D-backs this season. And we know it's been a tough season for D-backs fans, right? A lot of ups and downs, but we're almost at the All-Star break. And we've said if the D-backs can finish this gauntlet that they had from the start of July till the All-Star break, if they could go through that gauntlet and just be 7-6 entering the break at a minimum, it will set them up nicely for the second half of the season. And so a series split would make you feel so good entering that series against the Blue Jays. A series finale win would be so incredible as well, considering how the series against the Braves started and how all the games against the Braves have gone this year. If you win the finale, all of a sudden you have 6 wins now before that Blue Jays series. And then I would feel like if you just win one of the next 3 games against the Blue Jays, that would put you at 7-6 before the All-Star break. That's the minimum of what I wanted. But now I'm like, you win this finale against the Braves, you win 2 out of 3 against the Blue Jays. Now you're 8-5 through that gauntlet. Going to the All-Star break, I think that would inspire real confidence for the second half of the season. Saying you beat Dodgers, Padres, Blue Jays, and split the series against the Braves, I think that would make you feel really good as a D-backs fan. I think that would be really good for the clubhouse, for all the vibes all around surrounding the organization. So D-backs, let's get that series finale win, and let's enter the All-Star break going 8-5 through this gauntlet. But hey, if you guys are looking to upgrade your wardrobe this season, then may I suggest Stitch Fix, because you know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. My stylist always sends just right pieces and the fit is on point. It's like they have style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they just get me. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as you look. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's a stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's have a little bit of a tough Alek Thomas conversation here because listen. I want to first preface this conversation by saying Alek Thomas is a postseason hero. What he did last year in the playoffs, the D-backs don't get to the World Series without Alek Thomas. He was arguably the clutchest D-backs player coming off the bench. That pinch hit home run against the Phillies in the playoffs in the NLCS was one of the greatest moments ever. He had a 930 OPS in the NLDS and the NLCS. 4 home runs in the first 3 rounds for a guy who is not a power guy at all. He woke up in a big way in the postseason last year. Only 9 home runs in 125 games, and all of a sudden, 4 home runs in, 12 games. Alek Thomas stepped up in a big way in the biggest moments in the postseason last year. And as a D-backs fan, we'll always be grateful for that. And also, he's arguably the best defensive center fielder in baseball. His glove, his tracking ability, his instinct, his leaping ability at the wall. Maybe there's no one better in the sport right now than Alek Thomas when it comes to playing defense in center field. But I think it's fair to ask the question, does his glove outweigh his bat? Because I'm getting to the point where I don't know if the defensive upside of Alek Thomas is worth him struggling at the plate, because you look at the career numbers for Alek Thomas and the stats just aren't there. Alek Thomas has never been a good hitter for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And once again this season, he's not really contributing that much offensively. In his career, Alek Thomas is a 228 hitter, 630 OPS in 250 games. And I don't know how much of a sample size you need before you say, you know what, maybe this guy just doesn't have it on the major league level from an offensive standpoint. His strikeout percentage has raised the last 3 years. His walk percentage has dropped the last 3 years. I will say the sample size is small, right? He has dealt with a lot of injuries this season. He hasn't exactly been healthy, been there a ton. So I'll give him a little slack for that because the sample size is just small, because the hard contact stats actually tell you he's having a career year in terms of exit velocity, hard hit percentage. Alek Thomas is hitting the ball harder than ever, but the stats aren't exactly reflecting that right now because it's not translating to hits. I don't know how much longer you could do the charade of his defense is elite, but his bat is probably not major league ready. And I think that's okay. That's what happens to a lot of top prospects. They might have a couple of skills, a couple of traits that are effective on the major league level. Maybe they can throw 100 miles per hour. Maybe they do have elite defense, but maybe they have elite defense, but they can't hit. Maybe they can throw 100, but they can't command it or locate the pitch. Like, those are the things that make you a quality big leaguer. You got to have those other tangibles, not just the raw skills, but some of those fundamentals as well. And Alek Thomas himself can't exactly, hit the ball too well. He's not exactly an elite hitter, if you want to say that, right? He has definitely struggled at the plate throughout his career. And that's why I think it's time to maybe do a little swap in playing time with Alek Thomas and Jake McCarthy, because Jake McCarthy has been so good for the D-backs this season. He's been a really, really important player to what the D-backs have done with Alek Thomas being hurt, Corbin Carroll struggling, Lourdes Gurriel going through his slump. Like, Jake McCarthy has been the best or the second best outfielder at times this season. And I think we have to play Jake McCarthy more, and he has to be playing over Alek Thomas. Alek Thomas has started 7 of the last 9 games, while Jake McCarthy has started 4 of the last 9 games. Now that Jake McCarthy is crushing left-handed pitching, I think Jake just needs to play a lot more than Alek Thomas. I think the question you have to ask yourself is the package of Thomas, his bat, and his glove, is it better than the package of Jake's bat and his glove? Because I know Fangraphs doesn't love Jake defensively, but from the eye test, I don't think he's bad. I think he's fine playing defense in right field. Obviously, he doesn't have the strongest arm out there, but he did make a play recently in the last week to throw somebody home at the plate. I think the playing time between Jake and Alec needs to be flipped. Once the second half starts, it's crunch time. It's go time. D-backs are desperate, and you can't keep waiting for guys to turn it around. That's why I kind of half believe maybe Carroll and Grichuk should be closer to being a split as well. If Grichuk just continues to outplay Carroll straight up offensively, if Carroll never turns it around, maybe that needs to be a little bit closer to a split between those two guys as well. I still want Thomas on the roster because I still think he is a clutch performer. We saw recently against the Padres, right? Didn't in that 9th inning rally, didn't he pinch hit for a home run? Or at least have a grand slam in that 9th inning. Alek Thomas, I do think is a clutch hitter late game situation, but I think he's at his best if you bring him off the bench as a pinch hitter, bring him in as a late inning defensive substitution. I think that's the best use of Alek Thomas right now. I think he thrives in those moments. The numbers say he can't hit a fastball, the numbers say the fastball is the only pitch he can hit. That's why I think he struggled so much in his career. He can't hit non-fastballs. That's why I want to bring him off the bench, use him as a pinch hitter in clutch situations, wait for that fastball, and then let it rip, Thomas. That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Hopefully the D-backs take down the Braves in the series finale, and we will have a positive podcast. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.